Nobody gets that one.
Boogity, boogity, boogity. Let's go racing, boys.
Hey, everybody, welcome to the Outer Belt. I'm Patrick, and you know my friends.
Chili.
Buttermilk.
Eric.
Zucchini bread.
I'm so glad you're back.
And Jerry.
Oh, man, it's the whole crew. We're all here again. Finally, we got her back from the great state of Montana.
Woman power.
Oh, he got it right.
I pay attention, and I have it written down on a cliff note, but still.
As you should.
As you should.
As a good Boy Scout, be prepared.
You always be prepared.
Yes,
you
exactly.
wear your badges,
Yes,
all that stuff. I
all
thought
that.
about being prepared.
The one I went to Montana badge.
I went to Montana, and I
all I got was
survived.
a stinking badge.
No, I also got some Huckleberry pancake mix.
Oh, okay. All right.
Oh,
All right.
I didn't get the pancake mix, but I got caramels and some.
Did you get the Huckleberry syrup?
No.
Oh, it tastes just like blueberry from IHOP. So,
I thought it tasted like strawberries myself
does it?
on a summer evening.
Huh. I don't know how to go from there. So, speaking of being prepared,
Yes.
I was just I just did the round trip to Bolt Custom Trucks in Fort Wayne, Indiana,
Yes, you did.
and I thought about our good friends over at Expediter Boogie, and of course
Yes.
we're talking about Jerry,
Of course.
and he's a good guy.
He's a good guy.
He's a good guy.
We talk bad about him sometimes.
We
but
talk bad
he
about
truly
him
is a good guy.
most of the time, but he's a good guy.
Yeah.
He means well. Anyways, so I went over to Bolt Custom Trucks. I was thinking about him because I left at 4 p.m. in the afternoon, actually closer to 5.
Yeah.
And I was just going to go there and come right back, get back home around midnight, and I was like, that's cool. I can do this.
Yeah.
So I grabbed my usual bag with my permit book in there and water and 5-hour energy and all that stuff, and head out of town. At about halfway to Fort Wayne, Indiana, I was like, boy, I hope this truck starts. Because I didn't bring any clothes. I didn't bring a spare anything. I'm like, if I have to get a hotel while I'm here, I am making a trip to Walmart. So luckily, everything worked fine.
It all panned out good.
Didn't even have to use the jump box and was able to get back safe and sound.
Good.
But,
Were you back
glad.
before midnight?
That's all.
yes. So my Boy Scout badge would have been ripped off of
Yeah.
my shirt. Had
For
I-
preparation.
Yeah.
I did see the jump box was still at 80% this morning, so I got it on the charger. So we're ready for the next time.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good deal.
Do you have to put it on the floorboards this time of year, or does it hold in charges?
The
It's
jump
like in
box,
the wintertime, you have to get it
holds its charge, no
toasty.
problem, but it
Has-
wants to be warm in order for it to provide max power.
Yes.
So I also learned that if it has the cold error on it, it'll still work. It just won't provide max power when it's cold.
Yeah.
I see.
So you
Oh.
can start a go-kart.
Right. Exactly.
You couldn't start
Exactly.
the Jeep, but you could start a
Start a
go-kart,
go-kart, yeah.
or
maybe like a Volkswagen Bug. If you put the jump box
original.
on there, yeah, the original,
yeah.
and then you pushed it and popped the clutch.
Well, you need the extra weight for leverage. Going
Exactly, you
downhill,
really do,
know, it's
yeah.
something about
Get a little
physics
more speed.
and.
Yeah.
I have a fun fact.
Go ahead.
Doesn't matter how long the jump box is on there. If the truck is not in neutral, it still won't start.
Oh,
Oh, what
this
a
is
fun
true.
fact.
Yeah.
This is true. I got another one
I
for
had
you.
no
Did
idea.
you just learn of this?
Sort of.
Oh.
It also doesn't matter how long the jump box is plugged in and how many times you run through the cycle. If your negative post has accidentally popped off because it didn't have a good grip, it too will not work.
That'll cause a problem too. Yeah.
So just some good troubleshooting, ideas.
Huh.
Yeah.
Neutral. Imagine that.
Yes.
I know, right?
I tell you what, if I drove a truck anymore, like that's the wrong way of phrasing it.
On a regular
If I
basis.
was if I drove a truck on a regular basis, I would buy one of those things and have it with me all the time.
Oh yeah.
You know,
yeah.
APUs fail, chargers fail.
Yeah.
Like to be able to just grab, battery's dead. Let me just grab this thing and vroom, we're off to the
That's
races.
a nice little.
That's such a handy little tool.
I think
would have
about
one
When Vince and I first started,
back
what the
in
proto-
1847.
Yes. What the protocol was, which was,
You had to get a branding iron really hot, and then you hit the back of the horse.
well, or sometimes you had to call like a tow company out to jump you. I mean,
We still do.
We still do.
We
Yeah.
still do.
all the not in the
Oh,
yard.
you mean when we first started in the yard?
Oh yeah.
When we first started in the yard,
That's right. You
the
had
trucks
Rusties.
that we did have Rusties. The trucks that we had in the yard, that was your way to get them to fire off if they were. You had to call. You had to wait hours.
Well,
He'd finally arrive, and then it would jump.
Yep.
we
and
could
Vince did a little
jump
research.
we could jump a truck in the yard with jumper cables
And another truck.
and another truck.
Sure.
When we had to call Rusty's was when the truck was out of fuel in the yard,
Oh, maybe
and we
that's
had
what
to
it
get
was.
them to fuel it and then jump it because the APU doesn't run with no
Zip
fuel
fuel, yeah.
either. So that's when we used to call Rusty's. We haven't called Rusty's out in quite some time.
I'm
'cause we're
sure.
more on top of making sure our trucks are
Have fueled.
correctly. Yeah.
And I think it's a great investment, though, too.
Oh, sure.
Even if that's
Oh,
what
and then-
you were doing
and
was
also,
calling
I didn't
somebody.
do the research. Patrick had already purchased that before he left, and it arrived when we were there.
It's a nice.
So
it was a nice
Very
addition.
nice
Has been.
addition.
I-
It's paid for itself over and over.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I found it, and they've gotten cheaper. They're actually, you'd think something like that would get more expensive. They've actually gotten a lot cheaper. I was at our good friends down at ELW, and I was going to get a truck jumped off, battery's dead. Again, pretty common.
Mhm.
And he came over in his Dodge like he normally does, and he's got a big engine, so he could usually just jump a truck off with his
Right.
truck's battery. And so I was like kind of business as usual, and he walks out with this little tiny lunchbox looking thing, and I'm like, what is that? And I'm like, he's like, we're gonna jump your truck off, and I'm like, with that?
Yeah.
Not a chance.
Seriously? Yeah.
And it does. It looks
he
like a
hooked
little
it up.
lunchbox.
It fires off like it's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't even. It's like a normal like you're jumping off a car. It's just, it's like
Right.
It just,
like the batteries in the truck are charged, fully charged.
Yes.
And are charging it up.
it's crazy how good
Um,
that works. It's all lithium, I think.
When we used to go over to TK and a truck would sit there long enough, it would have the same problem. The
Yeah.
battery died or something. They used to wheel out the big
Oh my gosh.
stand-up charger
Yes.
that's 4 feet tall and have to run extension cords to the shop and have to sit there for a couple hours to charge the batteries.
Remember that?
And now they have one. It's actually a lot smaller that works pretty well as well.
Yeah.
And then the guys over at Carrier did the same thing.
Well,
They finally invested in one, and they work great.
I remember that one that old Fighter used to have, and they'd walk out to your car, and it was on a dolly,
Mhm.
two big giant wheels, and they plug it up, and they hit it and it'd be as it's trying to like,
Right, yeah.
and then that one it would and it would get started that way, and sometimes it wouldn't, and if it didn't have enough charge, it was like, oh my gosh, got to bring it all the way back,
Yep.
and it was always a hassle.
Yep.
And they eventually moved to the smaller portable ones. But my favorite was Cap City Trailers. Theirs, they took a golf cart. They were like, screw this hauling this crap around. A golf cart, on the back of the golf cart where the back seat would be, they put in like a bank of like 4 or 6 batteries
Yeah.
and then had the little control module. And then that's what they used to jump vehicles
Yeah.
off because they did it so
Wow.
often. They just
Yep.
drove up to you. But I think now they've moved to
The
jump
portable.
box. Everybody's
Yeah,
moved to those
using
things.
and they're all using this, except for TK.
Yeah.
They're all using that same one we have.
There was a truck that was broke down or something. I don't remember the situation around it entirely. But Jimmy had to go out. It was near where they lived, and Jimmy had to go. I think we had already moved the team to another truck or something. I can't remember all the details, but Jimmy had to go get pick the truck up, and he drove out there, wasn't sure if the battery was dead or not,
Uh-huh.
and so he went into his local O'Reilly's. They didn't have a large enough box for that size engine.
Right.
So he got one that was for like a 7-liter, and his idea was, we'll charge it, we'll try it. If it doesn't work, we'll return it.
Sure.
But it fired the engine off.
Yeah.
And he said it was dead when he got to it, hooked up to it, and it fired it right
Wow.
off. So I don't think it could do repeated ones like ours can do.
It can do multiples.
We can jump a lot of trucks off with
Yeah.
ours on a single charge. I don't think that one can, but it had enough power to get it done once, and that's kind of all you need. Then charge it back up.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So
Nice.
that world has come so far. But again, the one I've got, like I keep a personal one in my vehicle. It's a small one.
Yeah.
It's a couple $100.
Yeah.
Like they're not
The
expensive
good
at
ones
all.
are not expensive at all. No.
So
Seems
I
like
th- and
a
I think that's why
small
the-
investment for if you had to wait for somebody to come,
yes.
Oh,
because
yeah.
you're on
I th-
vacation and then you got to wait for somebody to come jump you off or
Yeah.
Things
whatever
happen.
else.
Ours is paid for itself over and over again,
Oh yeah.
not just in having to pay Rusty's to come out, but in our time,
Yes.
to get the jumper cables out, get another truck in position where you can reach it and that kind of stuff. It's paid for itself just in our time.
Absolutely.
So,
No, I think it's great. I definitely would have jumper cables. We always did have jumper cables on the truck, but I would also have that.
we did also. It's
Well-
nothing like asking somebody, "Hey, can you give me a jump? Oh, do you have cables too?"
Yes.
It's a lot easier when you hold the cables up and
Absolutely.
say, "Can I get a jump?" And
Well,
they're more
especially-
apt to help you that
And
way.
especially with a big commercial truck having the heavy duty cables. I mean, my jumper cables were $100 at Walmart.
Yeah.
They were the heaviest ones they
Yeah.
made, and they're plenty good. But you get, normal person in their normal car has the $15, $20 jumper cables. They can't handle that much current, and you talk about like risk of fires and
Yep.
stuff like that. So, couple little things to make life on the road easier.
Sure.
Batteries die, happens all the time.
All the time.
Just being prepared for it definitely takes that situation from bad to horrible. Because imagine, you got to wait on a jump, so we have to turn this load down, or
Yeah.
we have to pull off a load because we're waiting on a jump. Again, something like that could pay for itself in
Sure.
one jump.
Sure.
But I did get some really great news this weekend that I wanted to talk to y'all about, or this week. So as y'all know, one of my roles here at Hyfield is to plan out truck purchases and work with the dealerships and figure out when we're going to buy equipment and we're not going to buy equipment. And I've been hyper, uber, crazy stressed because 2026 is supposed to be the year of truck purchases. Everybody and their brother's doing it. It's an absolute nightmare because in 2027, the EPA changes that are coming out are extremely strict. And as of right now, Paccar has an engine that is clean enough to meet those standards. And it's 2025. Let's keep things in mind. This is a year and a half away. Paccar has an engine that's clean enough to meet those guidelines. And nobody else.
Really?
So Kenworth and Peterbilt, they have an engine, and no one else does. So Cummins has an engine that they say is almost done. It should make the guidelines, and they've invested some ungodly amount of money into getting this engine to meet all the clean air requirements and everything. And they're talking $30,000-$40,000 premiums on top of whatever we're paying for trucks now
Oof.
for this
Wow.
new engine. I don't believe Detroit has a solution yet. I think they're still working on it, and I don't think Navistar, which is international, I don't think they have one for it yet. And I haven't seen anything come out from Volvo about it either. Now, maybe they do, and they're just waiting to release it,
Right.
but I haven't seen it out yet. So it's been a bit of a panic because everybody's going like, well, these engines, they're going to jack the price up way high. It's a brand new technology. None of us know if it's going to work out. We, like Eric and I, in Hyfield, have been victims of a new EPA control system coming out that was a nightmare and almost bankrupted our company.
Call it the Ord head.
Yes, the Ardhead fiasco with Caterpillar. So what everybody's doing is in 2026, they're planning on, buying tons of trucks, thousands and thousands and thousands of trucks. Truck manufacturers have been kind of waiting on this to happen, talking with their suppliers, making sure they're going to have enough equipment to build all these things, talking about when they want to add on the additional staff to be able to do the multiple shifts. It's been a big deal that's been coming now for a while, and everybody's kind of been getting ready for it. And it's truly terrifying of like, when they release those spots, if you don't immediately get on it, you're not going to get a truck. And then your next option is going to be one of these 2027 models, which is going to be unproven technology. It's going to cost way more money, et cetera, et cetera.
Wow.
So it's been a big, big, big stress point. Everybody's been freaking out about it. And as of a week or so ago, the EPA with the Trump administration has officially rolled back that requirement. How'd they put it? They've overturned rules. They called it the greatest and most consequential day of deregulation in U.S. history. I think that's a bit much. I think that's just the administration doing what they always do. But it is, it's, I think, a huge win, you could say, for the trucking community, because it's clear that we need to keep pushing these greenhouse gases down. And I think, unless you're a rolling coal kind of person, like, there is some climate change that we can affect on it, but the technology's not there, and the scramble has not been good. Those EPA measurements, they basically said, like, we're not going to do it right now. Let's put it back in the EPA's hand, come out with some new time frame, to implement these things, give these manufacturers a little more time to make it happen. But what that has effectively done is they have destroyed that, not destroyed, but they have gotten rid of that whole buying frenzy that's about to happen. Which,
So will they have too much product?
no, because they haven't started building it yet.
Oh,
I was gonna say, is that a good thing then or a bad thing?
So it depends on where you sit on this.
It does.
So if you're a trucking manufacturer, the truck sales are already pretty good. They're not great. They could be better. Truck sales have definitely slowed down, but they're pretty good, and people are starting to buy again. If you are a dealership and you've not been selling trucks, it probably kind of stinks. But from a fleet perspective, from the end user perspective, it's great news. Coming out of this kind of bad economy situation, or this recession, freight recession we've been in, a lot of trucking companies are kind of weighing the whole, we need to buy these trucks when we can,
Mm-hmm.
but we also don't have the money to do it. Interest rates are pretty high, so that affects companies because companies borrow money to buy trucks. So it's like compounding issues. It's the trucks are expensive, the interest, so the money is expensive, and there's been a freight recession, so they already don't have a lot of money to work with. So there's been a lot of fleets that have been kind of like, what do we do in this type of situation? Because there's people that, if you got a 2 or 3 year old truck, you may have wanted to run that thing out to 5 years, but they're now saying, I'm going to go ahead and buy a 2026 model. That way I don't end up with a 2027. Because if you get a 28, 29, well, then it's been out there for a couple of years, so it's not as scary. And so that it's been a huge stress point on fleets, not knowing how they're going to be able to afford these things and how they're going to be able to buy them. And even again, if you even can get them, because it's going to be the ones that don't already have them that are going to be taking the brunt of it. So we've been looking at it and going like, all right, how do we play this? Do we want to order a bunch of trucks in 26? Can we order a bunch of trucks in 26? Do we need to get those? And when I say 2026, you have to order them in 2025 to get them in 2026. So they're fresh on our plate of conversation, and this just drastically changed that. Personally, as an end user, as someone who runs these trucks, it makes me happy.
how long's the delay for?
They haven't said yet. So they basically got rid of the rule and said, EPA, you need to work on this and figure it out.
So could it come back and still be 2027?
Doubtful.
Doubtful. Yeah, I don't think
Doubtful.
that's going to happen.
Yeah, it's the administration, the EPA of the current administration. It's just like the California law we talked about, where California withdrew their request
Sure.
for carb stuff because of the current EPA. So it's very doubtful. So it may come back in the next cycle with a new administration, but there'll still
you
be
have a
that
few
time limit.
years.
You have a few years on this, and you'll have time after that too, because they still have to go through all the processes. The regulatory processes actually make the rule, and then you have to have time for people to actually be able to buy the equipment. So, it's still a
great
few
long
years
time.
away,
Yeah.
but
We'll
it
see.
certainly could come back.
So
It's also possible that it comes back with this administration, right? It is possible
Sure.
that, towards the end of the Trump administration, that they do release these rules. I mean, the EPA still is trying to reduce greenhouse gases, no
Sure.
matter who's in office. Now, it may be they're not as strict or they change some rules, but in general, they're not loosening things up so much that it's like Wild Wild West. I mean, Trump was in 2016.
16 to 2020, yeah.
Yeah, and in those years, he didn't remove any of the trucking greenhouse gas regulations. And as a matter of fact, so there's 2012 or 2010 was the first one. I think there was a 2017 or 2018 greenhouse gas increase, or not increase, but stricter rule that played on through. So I mean, he's never restricted them before. This is the first time they are restricting it, and it is literally because the industry's going, we're not ready yet.
Sure.
This is about to cause a disaster. So,
Especially like you said, there doesn't sound like very many manufacturers are ready for it. You said Paccar, and that was it?
Paccar and Cummins is about to be there.
About.
Yes. So like even when you look at so we run heavy duty trucks, right? So we run Class 8 heavy duty trucks. We have Class 8 engines. These are million mile trucks. Like when you hear people talk about a million mile truck, these are the ones. Our engines, transmissions, everything's designed to last that long. The engines are wet sleeve, which means if you know what, imagine a piston going up and down in a cylinder, the wall that surrounds the piston on a normal, like your car, is all a part of that big giant block of iron. On a commercial truck that is a Class 8, it's a wet sleeve, which means you can actually, there's a thin layer of metal around that piston that you can actually remove and put a brand new one in. So it takes all the abuse of that piston going up and the fire and the combustion and everything. And then when it's petered out, when it's no longer good and it doesn't have a good seal, they can literally just remove that and put a brand new one in there.
Wow.
And the block and everything stays the same. So these are really well-built, long-lasting machines. A Class 7 truck, or Class 6, medium duty is what they call that, those do not have wet sleeves. So they are like your car. When the engine's junked, you can rebuild some elements of it, but the majority of them, you're just taking the engine out, putting a new one in. Or usually at that point, your truck's done. You're not going to do all that. But on those... right now, you can buy those from Cummins. You can buy them from Paccar. You can buy them from who's the other guy? Cummins, Paccar, Detroit. And Detroit and Paccar have already said we're out. So with these new greenhouse gas emissions, Cummins is the only one that's selling those medium duty engines. So it doesn't matter in a couple of years when you buy a medium duty truck, you will only have Cummins as an option. It doesn't matter what brand you choose. So, but it's because the cost of developing these new emission systems are so incredibly high. I mean, you think of like these companies are billion-dollar companies, but they don't have $1 billion in free cash sitting there to pour into R&D.
Yeah.
So a lot of them are taking what Caterpillar did in 2009 or 10 when they said, we're out. We're not doing this anymore. It's cheaper just to focus on something else than it is to design these engines for this emissions system. So,
Heather has a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Just want to make sure I'm understanding. So the reason of the frenzy is because if you buy the trucks before 2027, you're kind of grandfathered into not having to meet the EPA standards. Okay.
Yes.
So that's why.
Yeah, emission standards are for that calendar year.
So they start anything that year or newer made.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, and there are things like tax or EPA credits they can do. So for a long time, Detroit Diesel was actually selling clean air credits to International because their max force engine was not clean enough. It didn't meet the standards. It was close, but not quite. And so for every pound of greenhouse gas that they determined that this thing wasn't as good as, they had to buy credits from other companies that exceeded the greenhouse gas rules. So Detroit was running cleaner than what was required, so that they had leftover tax or EPA credits. They were actually able to buy them from Detroit and do that. And that they were probably buying some from Detroit, some from Volvo, some from Cummins, like just to meet demand. And that's one of the big reasons why Volkswagen Group had to step in and buy them, because they blew all their money on tax credits and they never could get that engine the way they wanted it. It's also what gave them such a bad name. I mean, those max force engines were just garbage, absolute garbage. And it was all because of the emission stuff they put on it. So, again, I don't think this is going to, like, kind of what you're saying, I don't think it's going to kill the emissions mandate. It's just delaying it.
Sure.
I do think it's going to come right back in a few years. But
just giving them a little longer.
Absolutely.
Well, and then maybe somebody doesn't monopolize, give those other companies time to catch up and get their engine where it needs to be. And so it's a little more equal opportunity for selling, buying, purchasing power, that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
I get it.
Well, and you look at like the EPA 2010, then there was the 2014, 15, 16, whatever it was. Everybody was able to do a few minor changes to meet those new standards, and so there wasn't a lot of pushback. This new line of standards is just going so far that it's like, oh, we have to rethink everything.
Sure. Well, it doesn't sound like an even playing field for selling of product. Maybe that's where it's coming from. If the only one that has it is Paccar, and you've got 3 others who are your major manufacturers, and they're not even close. how's that equal?
Yes.
You know, kind of 3 against 1. Let's take it to. I mean, I don't know how it all shook out, but to me, that's kind of, you know.
Well, and Cummins will sell to anyone; they don't care. But Paccar won't. Paccar's only going to put their engines in Peterbilts or Kenworths. Period. So it's not even like you could buy a Freightliner with a Paccar engine in it.
Sure.
So, it's very interesting, and it is. I know, like, I'm trying to convey how strong of an issue this is. So Ford and Chevrolet / GMC trucks / International, and I put all them together because they actually Chevy, GMC, and International all build their trucks in the same exact factory.
Yes.
And then Ford builds theirs separately. But they are all supposed to be doing better when this comes around because they have gasoline options. Not because they have a better diesel, but because they have gasoline. Gasoline isn't
Have
impacted
the
by
same
these.
requirements, yeah.
Yes, not impacted by these. Cummins just released their very first gasoline-powered engine ever
Wow.
because of this regulation.
Hmm.
So it's a big, big, big deal in the industry. There's been lots of R&D going behind the scenes, lots of...
So they're trying to get away from diesel?
No, they're trying to get away from diesel. Diesel is actually better than gasoline. It's just that those gas engines don't have that same standard
I see.
because there's so few of them.
Sure.
Like if you're gonna buy a big truck, you're probably not gonna put a gasoline engine in it. So there's so few regulations that Cummins came out with this engine to give people an alternative. You don't want to buy that untried, untrued diesel. So
Interesting.
it's definitely it's a weird world we're living in. The economics of it, with that big pre-buy not going to happen anymore, and I mean, again, for years we've been talking about this. It's literally been something we've been talking about since like 2020.
Leading up to so
Leading up to
2026 is going to be the time to buy.
Yes, it's literally been a point of conversation for that long, and the fact that it is now kind of with the stroke of a pen scrapped, and everybody just took a gigantic sigh of relief. It's just wild.
Do you think there's going to be an overflow of trucks because they were anticipating this as well?
No,
They haven't built them, I think.
yeah, I think we're far enough out that they don't.
That they
it's not
wouldn't
gonna
have
be an
gotten
issue.
that far in
Correct.
the process.
And who knows what CARB will do? Like CARB could always come back and say, "Well, if you want to sell a truck in our state, then you have to meet these greenhouse gas emissions or something."
Well, that's what the California pulled, though, back in
It is.
February, where they were petitioning for a waiver to set their own rules.
Yeah.
And they pulled that petition because they figured the EPA wasn't going to go for it.
Well, you know what's crazy is they pulled that, but they left in their CARB testing.
Well, I think they left in the things they already had a waiver for.
I
If there's a
follow.
waiver already there,
They didn't. Touch
they
it.
didn't bother it because it's already approved.
They're
Makes
just
sense.
enforcing it more.
They're just the enforcement started on January 1st of 24,
Mm.
but yes, now they're enforcing it a little bit stronger.
Oh, well, that's just some crazy changes in our industry. Some things that have brought me great relief, and I thought I would share that with y'all because it's huge impacts on our industry.
Yeah.
And one thing I'm curious too, talking about how it could change, is the Biden administration said all the Class 8 trucks got together, so Volvo, Daimler, International, and our Navistar and Paccar all got together and petitioned the EPA and the president to allow them to factor in aerodynamics of the truck into lowering those greenhouse gases. So, in other words, if they're saying like you need to get that down to 10 miles per gallon, which I know it's way more than that, but let's say that's what it is. Then they wanted to say, well, if we built an engine that was pretty efficient, but we could also do some things aerodynamically to make it even more efficient,
Right.
but and the whole package meets your
Sure.
requirements, can we do that? And the EPA and the Biden administration said, no, this really just focuses on your engine, and you have to stick with that. So that I'd be interested to see if that becomes a part of the new ruling once they do roll it out eventually.
Sure.
Because that's
Sure.
a way where they can, make maybe the engine doesn't have to be as difficult to produce if we can aerodynamically make it a little more slippery through the air, so it's using less fuel.
Sure. Gonna have a bunch of
Slippery.
like Disney bullet trains driving down the road.
That's right.
Tesla looking trucks.
I don't know. I just was thinking something like what's the
remember the
most aerodynamic? What
Well,
a
you've got the shell.
Teardrop,
You've got the
A
shell.
raindrop.
Well, you've got the Shell Super Truck, which is right here. That's slippery.
Yes.
Look at that thing. Got that little cone nose on it and everything. Or not cone nose, but raked nose. That's a slippery sucker. That thing, it's crazy. They've been able to get like pretty good fuel economy out of it. But if you go back to the original, which is this old Peterbilt cab over.
I was gonna say a cab over probably gets no aerodynamics.
So they don't. But if you look at this Peterbilt cab over right here, so you see the similarity, right?
Yeah.
Like it looks like the the Shell Starship, I think is what they call it.
They do. Yeah.
Is way more aerodynamic than the 372. So you see that like the 372 is a cab over. It's very basic, and all they did was put a like the ever so slightest curve on the front of it and the windshield, and then they added all the fairings and stuff, which were not common. So this truck came out in 1988.
First, the cab over.
The cab over did, yes. The Peterbilt 372. It's funny because a lot of people say it's the Darth Vader looking one.
Yeah.
But it kind of reminds me of the old Honda Pilots that they called the white ones were stormtroopers.
No, that's a Honda Ridgeline.
Ridgeline.
Yes, I had one of those.
So this one being the Darth Vader. But even like look at the mirrors, they're pretty standard mirrors from back in the day. They're not super aerodynamic. This truck. Well, let me go back. So the super new modern Starship got 10.8 miles per gallon. That's what they were able to do. Which, if you think about 80,000 pounds at 10.8 miles per gallon,
that's pretty impressive.
That's super impressive.
Yeah, it really is.
Now they weren't going very fast, and aerodynamics played a lot into it, and they had all these experimental gear ratios and yada yada yada. And that was 2018. In 1988, 30 years prior, the Peterbilt 372 got consistently over 11 miles per gallon.
Wow.
Consistently.
Isn't that insane?
Wow.
Like,
very much.
Could it haul the same weight?
Yes, they were both doing 80,000 pounds. It's just unbelievable. But now, as far as which is cleaner, even though the Peterbilt got better fuel economy, it was definitely doing a lot more to pollute the water. What's an emission in 1988? The only emissions they were worried about back then were cars and getting lead out. But no, these things.
I wonder if a part of that is how they closed the gap between the trailer and the cab.
I wondered about that.
On the Peterbilt
Definitely be better airstream
versus that space there.
I'm sure that's absolutely, it's part of it.
Sure.
And the idea is you get that gap as small as possible, right?
Yeah.
But
then you limit your turning radius and that type of thing.
It is. What I love about the Peterbilt 372 is this ad right here, because they didn't do aerodynamics back then, but they straight up call it out. Comparing the rounded kind of, it's so not rounded. I mean, it is just barely.
Yeah, barely, yeah.
And how they're comparing it to the front end of a Bullet and showing how the airflow goes around. Again, this was really unprecedented stuff. The only truck really before this came out was in like 86 or something, was the T600 from Kenworth. Which, again, Peterbilt Kenworth being the same company, or owned by the same company, it's not surprising one does an aerodynamic and then the other one does another aerodynamic.
Sure.
They weren't really talking about this back then. It wasn't really a concern, No,
because fuel was cheap.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yep. And, if you go back even further in the 70s when fuel was not cheap, trucking was regulated.
Yeah.
So it wasn't really a fair market for trucking or for freight. So if fuel was expensive, people just had to pay it. Like customers had to pay it. Just is what it is. When they deregulated, that really pushed the pricing down, but that got a lot of people in the environment. And it's just, I don't know. I love this stuff where it's like all these old trucks and then seeing what they could do back in the 80s, which 88, I guess, feels like, doesn't it feel like yesterday?
Sometimes.
For some of us, maybe more than others.
Exactly. Exactly. I'd like to not revisit 88.
Oh?
That's when I graduated high school.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh. This truck was just coming out.
It was. I was too young to drive it still.
Yes.
I was 13.
I love.
Fresh teenager I was.
I'm not going to talk about how old I was. Graduated high school,
Yeah.
Daddy.
We'll
So,
just say junior high.
I was
Let's
junior
just
high.
leave it in
yeah.
there. Yeah.
8th grade,
Junior high.
maybe 9th. 8th, 9th.
It snowed in Baton Rouge in '89. Yeah.
Back in '88, we were doing the WAP.
The WAP?
Yeah, none of you will get that, but there's someone out there that'll understand
Like,
that.
I made a
that-
little bit of money. I paid
No,
my bills.
it was
WAP.
a dance.
WAP.
It's
It
a
was a
dance.
dance. Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah. There's a few people out there that'll get that, but not many.
Back in the 80s.
Well, if you know that, please
Yeah, let us know.
let us know and comment.
Or at least put a
I
little
think
Vince
it's-
won't
giggle.
feel so old.
I think you just
Or,
No,
hash-
I still
or
feel old.
hashtag
We'll just feel old
Vince or
together.
something.
Yeah.
hashtag chili WAP.
That's right.
Did you want to demonstrate it for us
No.
so people know?
No,
Oh,
I will not.
okay.
I won't even provide Jerry with the video of it. Just
But Melissa did, and here it is.
it's Jerry.
Oh.
Just kidding.
So, as you can see from these pictures, like aerodynamics make a huge part of the efficiency of the trucks, and the more efficient they are, the less fuel they consume.
Sure. the
Which
less
just
fuel.
by that, the less fuel the less greenhouse gases they
emissions,
put
yeah.
out. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's why they want to incorporate it, and unfortunately, so far the answer's been no. But I think it'll change. I'm holding out hope.
I have a question for Jerry. Out of the bullet train or bullet looking truck and the 88 truck, which one would
The newer one.
you'd see yourself driving a newer one?
Absolutely.
He likes
That's your style?
Yeah, but that's not fair because he likes little creature comforts like power steering.
Air
Oh.
conditioning.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They had cruise control. I heard about it. They
Okay.
take this little stick and they would shove it between the dash and the.
Exactly.
I don't even want to know what they did back then.
Yeah.
Huh.
Think about
A
it too.
lot of excited driving. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah, I know. My dad was a truck driver.
Yeah, but think
He had
about
a cab over.
a lot of those were limited to 55 miles an hour. Can you imagine seeing the country at 55?
Yeah, because they weren't aerodynamic. They couldn't go any faster.
Weren't there rules?
It's like driving a wall of bricks.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when the speed limit across
Well,
country was 55
was
back
it
then.
Yeah.
Was it Johnson that required the speed limit 55 or something like that?
I forget who
Well,
it
it was because
Yeah.
of the fuel thing, right? Because the fuel cost
Yes.
was high.
Yes.
They're like,
Yes.
hey, if you only drive 55, you'll get your best fuel economy.
Right. And but the law, the legal limit then was 55.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And if you didn't move your limit down to 55, you didn't get federal funding for highways.
Correct.
So they kind of forced the states to do that.
They,
So
they still
Mhm.
kind of do. They've inched it up, but I think 80 is the max right now. You can't
Mm-hmm.
go 85.
80 is the max. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of 80 being the max speed limit and 55 was safer,
Zoom, zoom.
there are rules in effect in every state where you have to wear a seatbelt when you're driving a vehicle.
Yes.
And in Georgia, they are looking at allowing jurors in lawsuits involving motor vehicle accidents to be told if the plaintiff, the person that's doing the suing, the person that was injured, if the plaintiff was wearing a seatbelt or not, and to be able to use that fact in determining the amount of a settlement or a verdict or damages being paid to the plaintiff. So here's what I'm saying. If you and I are in a car accident,
Yes.
you're at fault. I'm injured because you're the one that was at fault in the accident.
Okay.
This is all speculation.
I don't like where this is going.
Patrick is a very, 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 very safe driver most of the time.
I will say I've only totaled one vehicle and it was in Georgia, but go on.
There you go. It's in Georgia. So I get injured in said accident.
I'm sorry.
Okay, and I accept your apology. When we go to court,
Can I get you to sign that?
no, no. Can I get you to sign the apology that you just made? to
No,
me?
I cannot.
I have it on recorded. I'm
Okay.
always recording.
Jerry's
it's okay.
recording.
Yeah,
He-
Jerry's recording when
ABR.
he's in court. Exactly. So
I was on the phone with Jerry when I got that totaled that car.
that's true.
Yep.
Anyways,
So we go. I sue you for damages. I'm hurt. I got a broken tooth or something. I'm hurt. So I sue you for damages. We go to court, And during the process of going back and forth, my attorney can tell the jury, I'm sorry, your attorney can tell the jury, well, he wasn't wearing a seatbelt. Had he been wearing a seatbelt, maybe he wouldn't have broke his tooth on the dashboard because he wouldn't have went so far forward. Vice versa, my attorney can tell the jury if the facts have to prove this.
Well,
right?
that's assumed. I mean, like, we should already be able to tell that, right?
That I was wearing a seatbelt or not?
Yeah.
Maybe not.
No, I'm saying I should already be in court being able to say, like, well, he wasn't wearing a seatbelt, Your Honor.
No, but you can't. You currently can't.
Really?
Cannot. Yes, that does not play a factor in the jury determining a verdict. They do not have to or cannot be told whether you're wearing I was wearing a seatbelt or not.
That's insane.
Yes.
Sorry.
That is.
Yes. So the whole purpose of this new law in Georgia is to try and reduce some of these astronomical settlements.
Nuclear
Settlements that are coming out, or verdicts that are coming out that are costing insurance companies a ton of money when someone may have prevented this accident or the severity of their injuries had they been wearing a seatbelt. That's what they're looking at doing with this new law. So this article is actually from FreightWaves. It's dated on the 25th of February. So it's about a month old. And I don't know where it's at currently, but it looks like it's going through the Georgia House and Senate, and the Republican governor, of Georgia has signaled he's going to support the rule.
In March 24, it says they signed into law a bill that lets juries hear evidence.
There you go. So it is now law in Georgia, in the state of Georgia.
24. That was last year.
No, that's Indiana.
Indiana.
Indiana did it.
Sorry,
Indiana
I
did the same
apologize. I
thing.
should have verified
States
that.
matter.
Yeah,
So Indiana did it last year.
correct.
I think that's important information to know.
I think it is too in making a decision. I agree.
Now, I'd also like to know, though, medically speaking, I'd like to hear from a medical expert witness. Would it have mattered if you had your seatbelt on versus not having your seatbelt on for the chipped tooth? And to me, as a juror,
Well,
I would hope to take in some of that as well.
Well, he chipped it on the curb when he flew out of the car.
Would I have flown out of the car
Sure, I get what you're
had I
saying.
had my seatbelt
Yeah.
on?
I get what
Yeah.
you're saying.
Right.
They have a lot of, I guess, they've done so much research with seatbelts. I would think they would be able to say,
This wasn't caused
based
by or was
on,
caused by.
Yeah.
if the person had been wearing their seatbelt, this is more likely what their injuries would be
Well, if you
Yeah.
to this level.
and if you've been in a bad car wreck, which unfortunately I have in Georgia, the seatbelt left a mark.
Sure.
Mhm.
Like it was a
Sure.
clear brace against me from where that happened, and Eric had the matching mark on the other side.
I
Like
wonder if.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. Continue, please.
No, I insist.
Well, I was going to change the subject a little bit from where you were,
Yes.
so I'd allow you to continue.
Oh, so
So I wonder if you take into account also.
I'm sure they could figure
circumstances
out
of
if
the
they had
accident,
to. Yeah,
whether,
absolutely.
You know how egregious were the defendants' actions that caused this accident.
Well, I would
Right.
assume this has to be the seatbelt would have to play a role in the what happened. Like if an 18-wheeler rolls over a truck and kills the entire
Sure.
family and
And
everybody's
no
still
one-
inside the
and
truck,
no one's wearing a seatbelt.
it's not going to make a difference.
It won't make a difference.
Yeah,
No,
because
it really
the
won't.
Camaro, you can just drive right over it.
Yeah, right over it.
So,
Yeah.
but if occupants are thrown out of the vehicle,
Sure.
of course, I mean, if they're thrown out of the vehicle, but the vehicle's also crushed and burns into flames, like,
It may not
That's
matter.
that
It may
1
not
or
matter.
It may not
2%
matter.
chance
Yeah.
that
yeah,
not
Yeah.
wearing a seatbelt might have helped you.
exactly. Well, but
But very
in
rare.
general, when you look at crashes, seatbelts save like it's an astronomical number.
Oh,
it's like
sure.
Oh yeah,
Sure.
the
88%
percentage
or
is way
something.
higher
Yeah.
than not wearing
Yeah.
a seatbelt.
I think that knowledge, though, should play a role in the deciding factor of whatever they're going for, whatever
Oh.
class action or
I agree.
whatever. I think it just
Well,
again, if it matters, why has it been withheld all along? I guess
Right.
why are
I'm
we being
surprised.
nefarious? Why does it matter that?
sure, but we can tell people your blood alcohol level, or we can do things like that. So
Sure.
why has this been withheld? That is an odd thing. But I will say, at the end of the day, you think about it, it's like the insurance companies are the ones that are benefiting from this.
They are.
So
There's actually a quote from a senator that is against this law, saying that nothing in the bill requires a single penny of premium reduction. What this bill does is hand more power to the insurance industry. So one of the reasons for doing this is to prevent these nuclear verdicts and reduce insurance premiums.
yes.
Well, I haven't seen anything in the article, at least, that says that there's proof in Indiana that insurance premiums have gone down. Right.
Sure, but
So, and we all know that price on nothing never goes down; it just goes up.
well, that's not true. There are situations where insurance premiums go down, and you do look across the country, and in different states where they are, like Las Vegas is one of the highest insurances rates for a car you can have, because the amount of accidents they have, they're insane. Even moving from like Louisiana to Ohio, our car insurance dropped because Louisiana has so many more thefts than Ohio has. Like State Farm straight up said, "Here's what's up."
Sure.
So
However,
they certainly do take that into account.
I understand that they'll take things like demographics and location into account, but in Georgia, with this law now, are people going to see their insurance rates just reduced because this law is hopefully helping prevent some of these nuclear verdicts?
I don't know, but I also know like it's not just Georgia premium holders. It's also commercial trucks that go through there.
Sure, I get that.
And
Well, and commercial trucks have insurance.
yes, but it even comes down to drivers and stuff. So like if you as a driver get in a wreck and you cause over whatever
X
it
number
is,
of dollars,
X number of
right.
dollars in damage, most carriers will disqualify you and you're out.
Sure.
And then it's really hard to get a job again. But a lawsuit gets factored into that. So if you're in a lawsuit and they award that person $150,000, that may push you over that threshold.
Right.
Whereas if they look at it and go, no, that person should have their seatbelt on, we're not going to give you that much money. It could save that person's job. And as someone who owns a trucking company and manages it, I know whatever we can do to get our insurance rates lower, we try to do, right? So we started putting safety systems on the trucks. We've batted around the idea of cameras. Cameras seem like a great idea until you get the nuts and bolts of it, and then they come with a side of liability. There's the what happens if your driver did cause the wreck, which fine, that it's a good thing. But what happens if your driver if something gets caught on there that's not trucking related,
Sure.
but it invades the privacy of your driver, right? So there's a lot of stuff that goes along with that. There's even more detailed stuff that I don't want to get into. So cameras become a challenge. But it's all to drive those insurance rates down. Insurance is a huge expense in trucking. And so I can certainly understand from a trucking perspective, insurance companies wanting it going down. And I believe, so they were talking about in Indiana that they were, critics were saying that the legislation distracts from the bigger question of who actually caused an accident. So whether or not you had the seatbelt on doesn't matter if you,
Right.
kind of like people that get ticketed for having, or get blamed for being drunk driving when they didn't really cause the accident. So they say that is a distraction from it. But Chris Spear, who is the president and CEO of the American Trucking Associations, said that the law provides jurors a more incomplete information to render a verdict. So, like, it seems like from a trucking perspective, most everybody's in favor for it. It's only your local politicians that don't like it because their constituents don't like it.
Sure.
Which is their role, right?
Right.
Like,
That's their role.
that's their job.
Yeah.
Is to be the voice of their constituents.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
I think it's good. I think
it's good too.
For me, it's a blind spot. I didn't know this wasn't allowed in the first place.
Yeah.
I didn't
I had no
either.
idea until I saw the headline.
I would have thought for sure
Yeah.
that would be like an immediate, of
Sure.
course.
Sure.
But
Everything I can see, it says it's cleared, that it's gone through.
Good.
In Georgia.
I'm assuming way back when this is like somebody objected and then there was maybe a law that said the seatbelt thing couldn't be brought in. I mean, like, that part of legality though? Like you can talk about it. I mean, I just feel like there was a law that maybe went against it to begin with, and now we're trying to do something
Yeah, I would think there has to be something,
know what
or
I'm
there
saying?
maybe not even a law, but a precedent.
that you couldn't talk about it.
Yeah, I would
That's
think maybe a
interesting.
precedent or something that said, a judge that said, we don't want to hear that, or someone that did something, hey, this cloud's cause, so we don't want a cloud cause.
Hmm.
But I agree, if you give them a complete picture of it, then you can factor in both cause and, hey, this person was doing this illegal thing that also contributed, right? Because there are contributing factors. And so, we see that with a lot of accidents. It's not always 100% one person's fault. Sometimes there's a little blame to go around to everybody, or not necessarily everybody, but a few people.
So if I can touch on that a little bit, I went back and looked at the article about the Indiana law back in 2024. The CEO of the American Trucking Association back then, Chris Spear, so same person still. After the bill was passed in February, allowing it, he said that the existing law forbid seatbelt use as evidence for jurors. So in Indiana, at least, there was a law forbidding them from knowing.
Yeah.
It took 4 years and 4 attempts. So every year for 4 years, they tried to pass this law in Indiana, allowing the seatbelt evidence to be put to be presented to jurors, and it finally passed on the 4th year. That's interesting.
Wow.
That is.
Well, I think there's one thing. I mean, like even back in Louisiana, we saw a lot of reform coming with these crazy verdicts in these outrageous sums of money.
Sure.
In Louisiana, trying to wrestle that down and make it like no, because that cost. It seems like, oh well, who cares if corporate America loses money, but that just gets charged back to us.
It does.
We pay it.
We pay it. We
so,
sure do. We sure do.
It may not be vocally said, but it comes in the form of a rate increase the next year. Yeah, anything to help keep those costs down. And also the good thing about it is it's still, for the people that are genuinely wronged, it still allows for them to be
Right. To be compensated.
for
Sure.
it. It's not saying, hey, you can't do X, Y, or Z. It's just saying, did this contribute? If it did, then you pay a part in it, so you don't necessarily get as much as someone who is completely innocent.
Sure.
It's your article.
If I can share one more piece of information from the Indiana article, also on freight waves, an American Transportation Research Institute study found that verdicts greater than $1 million in truck crash lawsuits rose on average from $2.3 million in 2010 to $22.3 million in 2018.
Wow.
I mean that's not just inflation. That's crazy money.
Yeah.
You know, that's a big difference.
It just makes me think attorneys have learned how to work a jury.
They have. Oh, sure.
Mhm.
They
Yep.
have.
Because it
They
don't
really
help
have.
when you see every other TV ad.
No.
Buy a truck.
Yeah.
It's hard to
Or
have
the
it.
billboards.
Well, it's
Oh,
hard. It's
God.
all
hard
through
to have.
Texas.
It's hard to have an impartial jury when that's what everybody in America is seeing.
Right.
Very
Yeah.
interesting. Thank you for bringing that
And
to
who
us.
knew it was not permitted before? Like,
Yeah.
I just
no
would
idea.
think. I guess I would just assume, it's all part of the case, all part of the evidence. Why are we hiding that? And
I think, I don't know, I feel like this sums it up. The primary focus is the defendant's negligence, not the plaintiff's failure to buckle up. So they're like, it shouldn't matter. That person was wrong. It doesn't matter what the not wrong person was doing.
But I think to me, it still matters if
Mm-hmm.
if a person gets hit by a car and they're jaywalking, is different than a person who gets hit in a car in a crosswalk with a green
Sure.
crosswalk.
I get that.
Agree. Not saying
I
I
get
agree
that.
with that statement, but I think that's what the base is.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, it's a well-formed thought sentence. I just disagree with it.
I think an important takeaway from this entire conversation: wear your seatbelt.
Wear your seatbelts.
Just it's safe. Wear your seatbelt,
Yes.
please.
It does blow me away when I see the number of accidents and people
Yeah.
that don't
You
wear
want
their
to wear
seatbelts.
seatbelts? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's
Every now and then it happens once or twice a year. We'll get a driver disqualified for not wearing a seatbelt, and it's
yeah.
like
Or not wearing a
trucks.
seatbelt properly.
that one gets a little gray to me because in a big vehicle like that, the upper part doesn't do as much as it does in a car.
I understand.
So I still wear my seatbelt properly every
Sure.
time because it's the law, but I have a little empathy for those situations with the people that don't wear one at all.
Yeah,
It
I
just
don't have any
blows my mind because
Yeah.
a truck is relatively safe. You're a huge item, so when you hit something, the entire truck absorbs the impact,
Sure.
and it actually doesn't impact it doesn't impact the driver nearly as much as it does whatever you hit. It's kind of the school bus thing, right? Like
Right.
school buses don't
Don't have
generally have
seatbelts for the
seatbelts.
kids.
A lot
Yeah.
of them do, but when I was growing up, they didn't.
They didn't when I was either.
And even now they have them. They're mostly lap belts. And the reality is, like, they're not very effective because there's so little energy. Like, you think, like, oh my gosh, a school bus just hit a brick wall and came to a stop,
Right.
and everybody flew forward. And if they were wearing a seatbelt, well, there's so much energy in that in that bus or so much mass that absorbs so much energy that a kid, it's kind of a weird thought, but flying forward into that padded cushion of a back seat doesn't really sustain much harm. Like, it's pretty safe situation.
Right.
You think like that's crazy. You can't imagine, but it kind of is. Whereas a seatbelt, you could actually kind of fold yourself in half, tuck yourself, cause back injuries and things like that. So it's not like a super. When you're driving, they are relatively safe, but it is very easy to get in a car wreck or a truck wreck and get thrown out of your truck.
Sure.
That is still something that's pretty, especially on the Cascadias and the Volvos, Internationals with the big, huge windshields.
Mm-hmm.
Those are easy to fly out of, and drivers still drive with no seatbelt.
I think if
I
you
just don't get it.
Roll it over, or a wind gusts and blows you over, any of that.
Absolutely.
Where are you gonna go if you're not attached to your seat? Like,
Yeah.
And
you're
you're in
gonna
a
get-
huge cab, so there's
and-
lots of room for
Lots
you to
of
move
space bounce
around.
Yeah. seatbelt. Wear your seatbelt.
Wear your seatbelt.
Yeah.
And if you see your driving partner not wearing a seatbelt, tell them, put your seatbelt on.
I would like to keep my partner so we can keep our job.
Yep. And if you don't like that thing rubbing against your shoulder, because I know a lot
They've
of people
got those
don't,
padded things.
they've got these big fluffy padded things you can
I
buy
use
and
those.
put them
Walmart.
on. Yeah, and they take all that pain away. They're actually kind of nice. So definitely, like, there's options out there. If you don't like it, there's ways to get around it and tolerate it. It's not worth losing your job over. It's not worth losing your
Your life
over.
No.
All right, what do y'all? So we have an option. I'm going to poll the audience, and we're going to do it live. That way you all see it. We've gone long.
A little bit.
Shocking.
Shocking.
We have to discuss an element of Hyfield trucks per the request, and Jerry and I identified it already, and we missed it last week, and we could talk about it now, but it's going to be another discussion, or we can table it for next week. Your choice. It's riveting.
Crickets.
It's
I hear
riveting.
crickets
It's
in my,
riveting.
in my head. Chirp, chirp.
I think that if I talk about it now, I won't be able to do it justice.
So let's table it.
So we'll table it.
Is it a specific viewer?
No, it's just continuing the Hyfield story.
Oh, I think you should table it and start next week with it.
All right. We'll
or
do
next
that.
episode.
So next episode, we will start up in front, and we are going to talk about, are you ready? Drum roll. I don't have a drum roll.
I can't.
There you go.
I don't know if that's actually picking up. Anyways, we're going to talk about lift gates.
Ooh. Lift gates.
Yes.
Wow.
You know.
And boy, do I have some thoughts.
I like to put the Traeger on it.
But until next time, hit that like button if you like us, our thumbs up button if you like us. If you don't like us, hit that down thumbs arrow twice. Really let people know you don't like us. Drop us a comment below. We see some of y'all are commenting. We appreciate that. Anything you can do to help support our channel definitely helps us out. If you want to reach out to us, you can
Email us.
You can email us at theouterbeltpodcast@gmail.com or visit us at hyfieldtrucking.com if you're interested in learning more about Hyfield or joining the Hyfield fleet.
You can call 833 Hyfield, which is 833-493-4353. Option 1, and you can speak to either Delina or myself. We'd give you lots of information over the phone. Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Time. You can also do live chat on our website. I'd be happy to respond to you there. You could do Facebook Messenger. I do a lot of those as well. So reach out, ask your questions, comments.
What?
That's all I got.
Anybody else? Anything? No? Going once, twice? Well, thank y'all so much for hanging out with us. We look forward to seeing you next time. In the meantime, wear your seatbelt, stay safe, make good decisions.
Wear your seatbelt and don't leave money on the table.
Wear your seatbelt and don't text and drive, and keep those wheels turning.
Good night. Good night.
Bye.